Okay, so today we're going to create a script that's going to allow the enemy to follow us. So last time we created a script that allows us to destroy the enemy. So let me try this out. We're going to go pick up a weapon and shoot the enemy. The enemy in this case is the box, and it's get deleted when the health hits 0. But now we're going to do, when we hit it, the enemy is going to start following us. So we're going to use the box and it's going to follow us when we hit it once. So for this, we're going to go over here and we're going to pause the game. Now we're going to go into our script. And this is our enemy logic script. So we added this script to our enemy. So if you go over here to the enemy, and if you go over here, you have the enemy script, double click it and open it. Now, first of all, we're going to need some new variables. So first of all, we're going to add the target. So we're going to go above this, and over here, we're going to type public game object target. And over here, we're going to save it and we're going to link the player to it. So we're going to go over here back to Unity, wait for this to load and click the enemy, scroll down, and over here, we're going to drag and drop the player. So just drag and drop the player over here. Now the target is the player. Now let's go back to the script. We're also going to need some new variables. So first of all, we're going to add a public float, rotation speed. So using this, we're going to be able to change the rotation speed of the enemy. So if you want to rotate it slower, it's going to rotate slower, and we're going to be able to change this later over here. So scroll down, and as you can see over here, we have the rotation speed. Now let's go back to the script, and also we're going to add a private quaternion, and we're going to name it look rotation, and also a vector free, so private vector free, and we're going to name it direction target. Alright, so by using this, we're going to rotate the enemy always towards the player. So later we're going to be able to move it forward, and it's always going to follow the player. So first of all, we also have to go above this, and we're going to add a public bool is attacked. And we're going to set it to false by default. So by using this bool, we're going to set it to true once the enemy has attacked, and once this is true, it's going to start following the player. So for this, we're going to have to go back to our cannon bullet script and go under on collision enter if it's enemy, and over here we lower the enemy health and we link the script enemy logic by the name enemy L. So we're going to go over here and we're going to type enemy L dot is attacked equals true. Alright, so now we're setting is attacked to true, and the enemy is going to start following us. And to do this, we're going to go over here in our update function and we're going to add a if statement. So if is attacked is true equals true, then we're going to add these brackets, and if this is true, then we're going to rotate the enemy towards the player. So to do this, first of all, we're going to use the direction target equals and add these brackets and type target dot transform dot position minus transform dot position dot normalize, like this, and add this at the end. Alright, so this is the position of the player because it's a target position, and over here we only use transform.position. This means that we use the position of the object that this script is attached to. So in this case, if you go over here, as you can see, this is the enemy. So this script is attached to this object and it's going to use this position. Now let's go back to our script, and over here we're also going to type look rotation equals quaternion dot look rotation, and we're going to type over here direction target. Alright, so now we calculated by how much we have to rotate the enemy object. Now we also have to rotate it. So to do this, we're going to type transform.rotation equals quaternion.slurp. And over here we have to type transform.rotation. This is the current rotation. And now we have to type by how much we have to rotate it by the end. So we're going to use look rotation. And now we're going to type time.delta time times rotation speed. Alright, so by changing the rotation speed, we can actually speed up the rotation or slow it. And now if we save this and if we go back to Unity and if we press play, now if we pick up the weapon and if you attack the enemy, it's going to start looking at us. So let's just attack the enemy. And as you can see, it's always rotating towards us. Alright, so now that we've done this, we also have to move the cube. So we're going to go back to the script. And first of all, what we're going to do is freeze the rotation of the x-axis and the z-axis. So it's only going to rotate by y-axis. So if we only rotate the y-axis, it's only going to look left and right. As you saw previously, it was also moving the x-axis. So we don't want to rotate like this. Alright, so let's set this back to 0 and we're going to go back to our script. And what we're going to do now is set the x-axis and z-axis always to 0. So we're going to type transform dot Euler angles equals new vector free. And over here in the vector free, we're going to set the x-axis to 0. We're going to ignore the y-axis, so we're going to type transform dot Euler angles dot y. And we're also going to freeze the z-axis to 0 like this. So now if we save and if we go back and press play, now let's pick up the weapon and shoot it again. Okay, so now as you can see, only the y-axis are moving. So it's only looking at us, and now we also have to move it forward. So to do this, it's pretty simple. It's basically the same thing that we made for the player, but it doesn't require any key pressing. So we're just going to go into the next line of code over here. So first of all, we have to add a new variable over here. We're going to type private vector free movement like this. And now we're going to go back to over here and we're going to type movement equals transform dot forward. So this is going to calculate it how to move it forward, and we're going to multiply it by speed. And we also have to add a multiplier over here. So we're going to type public int speed equals 1. We're going to set it to 1 by default. We're going to be able to change it later in Unity, and over here we're going to multiply it by speed. So by using speed, we're going to be able to change the speed of the enemy. So now we're actually going to move the enemy. So to move the enemy, we're actually going to need a rigid body of the enemies. So currently we didn't add it yet, the rigid body. So we're going to go over here and we're going to type rigid body. So by doing this, we just added a rigid body to the enemy. Now let's go back to the script, and over here we're going to link it. So we're going to go over here and we're going to type public rigid body RB. Like this. Now let's save it, go back to Unity, and we got the rigid body over here. Now we can just drag and drop the enemy to the script like this. And now the rigid body is linked to the enemy. Now let's go back to the script, and over here we're going to type rb.linear velocity. Alright, so to move it forward, we have to use rb.linear velocity because in Unity 6 they changed it from velocity to linear velocity. So use rb.linear velocity equals new vector free. And now over here we have to use the x-axis and the z-axis from the movement calculation that we did before, but we have to ignore the y-axis so the gravity still works for the enemy. So we're just going to use the x-axis, so we're going to use movement dot x, and over here to ignore it, and over here to ignore the y-axis, we're going to type rb.linear velocity dot y, and over here we have to also use the movement dot z. So we just used the x-axis and the z-axis from this calculation. So now if you save it and go back to Unity, press play, pick up the weapon and shoot it, it's actually going to start following us. So it's following us really slowly. We can also change the speed of the enemy. So just press stop over here and we're going to go under the enemy. And if you scroll down, as you can see under speed, right now it's set to 1. So if we want to change it, we can change it to 2 and go back to the game. And now if you pick up a weapon and shoot it, it's actually going to start following us a little bit quicker. But now we can actually also shoot it and it's going to get destroyed like this. Okay. We can also have multiple enemies, so we can just duplicate this and just throw it in the map like this. Alright, so this is it for this tutorial. Thanks so much for watching. If this helped you, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. In the next tutorial, we're actually going to create a game that's going to be inspired by the game Vampire Survival. And we're actually going to use 3D objects, so it's not going to be a pixelated game. So yeah, hopefully it's going to be better. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe to the channel. And also you can support the channel on Patreon. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.